Rode microphones, and official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com. Now, here's your host from Ontario, Canada, EVH gear artist Eric Broadbent.
Hey everyone, it's the weekend. Happy Friday to you all. Welcome to EVH Gear TV. We are live. Very happy to be bringing a great presentation to you this evening. Joining us tonight from Line 6, we have Nick Bell and Eric Klein. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Great.
Doing great.
How you doing, Eric?
Doing very well. Glad to have you. It was nice talking to you a little bit earlier this afternoon, Nick, and we worked out some production things and ready to have a great demonstration tonight. We're going to probably have a few questions, and then we're going to jump into some of the tone. You're going to show us some demonstrations. Obviously, we're here tonight for one reason only, to explore some Van Halen tones with the Helix product. But that's not to say that, it's the only thing we're going to talk about. And just for people that are joining maybe now or coming back later on, look in the chat. I did post a link. Nick was kind enough to share an EVH patch he's going to demonstrate tonight. Now, he does have a revision for it. I can probably get that one from you later, can I?
Of course.
Okay, perfect. But you can download it for now, and Nick will tell you when he demonstrates the product what the change he's made on the patch since I put the link up there. But you go ahead and free to download it and import it into your Helix. And if you have any problem, if you're new like myself doing that kind of thing, there's all kinds of helpful tutorials on the line6.com website and all the forums and things like that as well, too. So, gentlemen, I just want to start it off by saying, first of all, I want to thank a few people. I want to thank your entire team, Henry in your marketing department. I think you've got Jamie, is it, in the IT there as well? Is that correct?
James, yes.
James, okay, James as well. And both of you, thank you, and your entire staff. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of emails that transpired back and forth, and I saw a lot of names that made this happen. So thank you to your entire team for making this happen. So I'm very happy to have you there. I also want to say a big thanks to Chad Boston. He runs the Friendly Gear Freaks page, both friendlygearfreaks.com and the Facebook page. I joined that forum and their pages and stuff just about a week ago, because with the Helix was coming in here to me, and I needed to consume as much knowledge as possible. So those guys over there opened arms to me, were very nice to me. People were joking with me. They said, "How many? Have you seen this video on the Helix?" I said, "There isn't one video on YouTube I have not seen on the Helix, because I've seen them all. I'm trying to learn it all." And another big thank you to my friend Jamie Trevino. He plays over in a band, touring band in Michigan, and he's a huge advocate for the Helix. He has several of them, and he's going to be traveling down south with the Helix. He's taught me a lot of things already. So, I just like to thank people that make things happen, and that's that. So let's start off the show by getting a little bit of a background information from both of you. Kind of give us a little bit of a synopsis of what you do for the company. I'm going to turn it over to the big screen so people can see you guys and not my ugly mug. Give us a little bit of background, and either one of you can go first.
Sure. My name is Eric Klein. I'm Senior Product Manager. I've been here since 2010, and my domain is sort of Helix. That's sort of my baby. So when people complain about it, it comes to me. When I complain about everybody else, it goes to them. Let's argue about fonts, colors, jump around. I'm known as Digital Igloo on a lot of the forums. Can you hear me?
Just a little bit louder if you can.
A little bit louder?
Yeah.
I'm Digital Igloo on the forums, but you can. A lot of people can just email me directly or hit me up on the forums or Chad Boston's
Facebook page,
Helix
right?
Facebook
Yep.
page. Yeah. So
Okay, fantastic.
this is my good buddy Nick Bell.
Yeah, totally. So, my name's Nick Bell. I'm the West Coast product specialist. I'm part of a team of 4 product specialists, and I'm located on the West Coast, and been with Line 6 for going on 7 years now. And, my role is, to go around to, our resellers and such, and train their staff and their teams, and spread the word of Line 6.
Fantastic.
Voorhees.
And we got Jason Voorhees here.
Doesn't say much.
Love it. Friday the 13th. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
The boys got a couple of those little figures here as well, too. Yeah, and I didn't really think about it until later on today was Friday the 13th, so kind of the spooky day. My boy today goes on a camping trip. I shouldn't say a camping trip. He went on a field trip with his school, and they go to a campground. And he's like, they sent me to a campground on Friday the 13th. So it's funny, but let's not worry about that. Let's talk about some tone. What was it about Eddie Van Halen's tone that kind of captured both of your attentions? And I bet there's probably different answers, which is great. When did Eddie Van Halen come into your, or Van Halen for that matter, come into your lives? And I'd like to hear the differences between both of you.
Yeah, shall I go? Shall I do it? Well, gosh, having growing up with two parents that all they listened to was 80s music and such, I was always surrounded by Van Halen. And, songs like Dance the Night Away and especially Somebody Get Me a Doctor, those tones really stuck out to me because it's as if you could just hear the air moving. You could hear the paper that the speakers are made out of. And there's just little elements to his tone that I just have never heard anywhere else. And I really have, guys like him and, even Randy Rhoads, but, tone-wise, guys like Eddie Van Halen, they are the reason I even picked up a guitar. I was, out of many other guitar player friends that I've had, I was the one that was more worried and conscientious about my tone as opposed to writing a song. And that kind of deal, which probably is why I'm not the greatest songwriter, but I think I really got into guitar because of tone, all due thanks to Eddie Van Halen.
How about yourself, Eric?
Yeah,
I was a little kid, and I remember my parents are very conservative, Midwestern, very cute couple, and they didn't want me listening to metal, or rock at the time, and I got a copy of Hot for Teacher. I saw the video for Hot for Teacher, and I sat and I recorded it off the TV. And I remember playing it on this old Fisher jukebox that they bought me, and there was a little switch on it that went from mono to stereo to wide. and I remember listening to Hot for Teacher over and over and over again, and it's such a dynamic song, and there are these parts that just blow up in your face, and then it gets really small, but it maintains the intensity. And I remember sitting there when the guitar would then kick into the chorus, I'd flip it from mono to wide, and it was one of 4 or 5 songs that I kind of gravitated towards, and that was my little 8-9-year-old, kid trying to mix a record or trying to make it sound good, and I was like, oh, it's cool when I flip this switch. And that, if anything, that was sort of the first exposure I had to even, how recordings and how audio can be made to sound better, and it may have even spurned the path into my engineering and mixing career too. So
love it.
It's a big influence.
See, for me, I've had this discussion with many people on the show before too. Sometimes the era of Van Halen that you discover is not necessarily what you love today. Like I discovered Van Halen with "In the Cradle Will Rock" on Women and Children First, and today it's one of my least favorite songs, but that's what grabbed me by them. So it still holds a very special place in my heart. And I remember having posters as a kid. I remember, I think it was either from Circus Magazine or some calendar, but I had a fold-out poster, and it was a David Lee Roth, and it said Van Halen. And at the time, this was before I really got to discover, David Lee Roth for what he was. And I used to always say to myself and my friends, this Van guy is really weird, because I thought he was Van Halen, right? And obviously I was very young at the time, but, and I still think he's weird, but I love the guy. But that's really cool how everyone has their different time periods, and look what it's done for you guys. Spawned a career. And I think Paul Riario from Guitar World, he was on the show here sometime last year, and he said there's a lot of people in the business today that are working. We're all examples because of Eddie Van Halen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
From manufacturers to to guitar players to everything, from pedals to guitars to amps, software and everything in between.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah. I'm going to jump over the chat just for a quick second, say hi to the folks that are jumping in. Then we're going to jump back over and we're going to discuss why Van Halen tone-chasing guitar fans would benefit from using a Helix. And I'll let you guys give us all the many reasons why on that. So we've got a bunch of people jumping in. We've got FNAF Gamers. We've got Trey Mendoza. Let me see here. TazMax 2002. Let me see who. Quentin James is jumping in. Axis, Zachary Suter, Carlo Santin, Lyle Ketchum, Darren Moore, Rock and Roll. Dan Wilhite, Scott J, My Beautiful Poison Ivy is jumping in here. Lyle Ketchum, Brad, Dan Wilhite. Let me see, Chris Jones is jumping in, and there are a couple of people who are mentioning to get a little bit more volume for Eric, but the other Eric, and I think we're okay. now. James Burrow, and he's asking a question on which it looks like the firmware, but I'll let you guys digress to that later on in the program. I knew there's going to be questions on firmware, and I know how to update firmware on other products. I haven't done it on this one, and I think this one came with 2.2, whatever it is right now, 2.10 or something like that. So I'm up to date on mine, I think. I'll have to learn how to do it myself when a new one comes out. Guitars and stuff. Jumping in, says Chad. Chad Boston's here. Great. Thank you, Chad.
Hey, Chad.
Draw with Beat Tours here. Axis and Tasmax 2002. Actually, no, there's still a few more. I know I shouldn't have scrolled that fast. They come in pretty quickly. Chris Kerr's jumping in. Dan Wilhite, Axis, the Omega, and Frank C. I'm going to highlight that so I can try to remember where they left off. So the question is right now, how could Van Halen tone chasing freaks benefit from a Helix product?
It depends on what their expectations are. If somebody's really into Eddie Van Halen's tone and gravitates towards one particular tone, maybe Helix doesn't. Helix really shines when you want to chase many tones and be able to switch between them immediately, and jump around and program stuff. And be able to listen in an environment where you're not going to blow out your neighbors as well. So, if you're able to, kind of encapsulate Eddie's tone into one preset, then there isn't a huge advantage to modeling, to be honest. Again, if you have the environment where you can crank an amp, but it really shines in just the flexibility and the routing and stuff where you decide, hey, I really like this tone, but I want to take it in a completely different direction without losing what I did last time. So.
Right, totally. For me, I would say, if you were to think of, for me, my favorite Van Halen tone would have to be Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2. And you think, well, how did Ed get that sound? Well, he was using, a plexi, he was using a variac, he was using a cabinet with 20-watt, greenbacks in there. So to think, well, if I want to bring that tone to any gig, or even how we were talking earlier about, I just feel I'm in a Van Halen mood and it's 3 a.m. Cranking up that Marshall, you can't do that. Or if you think about going to the gig, bringing all those items, especially a variac, that's a pretty, bulky and pricey item. Or I could bring it all in one package. My Helix in my Helix backpack. I show up to the gig with the guitar, my Helix. The sound guy's happy because that's the other part of it. For a Marshall or really any tube amp to work properly, it has to be cranked. And nowadays, any touring musician, gigging musician even would can relate to is that what's the first thing the sound guy tells you when you go up there? Can you turn down your amp? Mm-hmm. And it just ruins your tone, especially if you're using an all tube head. And so that's why I think, and not to even get into the weeds yet on the dynamics and the true point-to-point modeling, so you get the true feel and reaction of analog gear. Not only to dive into that, but to just have it all in one package and be able to achieve those dynamics and those different tones that Ed is popular for. That would be my answer on how one could benefit with Helix.
I like that. And something else I think where people will find this as well too, so we all chase a certain tone period or time period or tone period. I guess we'll say tone period is the right term. We're going after Van Halen in the early years, Van Halen 1 and 2, and then things changed a lot on Fair Warning. They changed even drastically again in 84. 5150 goes different. Then we get into the Balance area, which is another fantastic tune. He started doing a lot of the wet, dry, wet stuff and some really beautiful, rich panning, things like that. So something in my opinion, not knowing the Helix at all yet, I'm just learning it right now. You not only can you get his tone, you can get all of his tones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Save them to presets.
Definitely.
And if you're a Van Halen cover band, man, oh man, you got it. You can do the Dave Sammy era with a couple of banks. So I love that as well. So the next question I have here, and I know the answer to this now because I've answered it myself, and you and I talked about this in our production test today, but I'd like to hear both of your input on this. Myself, sometimes, like I'm a computer guy, I work in computers for a living daily, but I'm intimidated by things where I have to jump in and twist and parameter tweak and everything like that. When I get the creative urge to play guitar and record, I want to plug in my guitar and go, and I don't want to have to, dive into 19 parameters to get something. By the time I found what I'm looking for, I've lost the urge and I don't want to play anymore. So what is the learning curve like on the Helix product line? Is it something that people can just plug in and go, and then is it fairly easy to expand on and tweak to your liking?
Absolutely. We spent many years working on the user interface, and it's not difficult to make something that's easy to use, especially if you can throw a fancy color screen and touch switches at it. But it's still extremely difficult to make something that's easy to use, but is still really deep and flexible, without purposely obfuscating that depth. So the ability to just find what you're looking for without having to dig in the manual was really important. We knew that because there's so much depth, there's going to have to be at least a little bit of menu diving. And because of that, we realized we wanted to bring a lot of that up to the front. So we made sure that 90% of what people are going to typically edit their tones, during a session can all be accomplished from one home screen. We also added tons and tons of shortcuts. So if you're the type of person who wants to go and assign the flanger speed to the expression pedal, instead of having to figure out, okay, how do I do that? I must have to go into some deep controller assign menu. Instead, we include this 2-page color cheat sheet in the box that shows you all of the shortcuts to get around there. And in that particular case, you can hold down the parameter you want, hit learn, move the pedal, and you've done it. So once you've done it once, you can learn a lot of these weird little tips and tricks and shortcuts. And the hope is that people actually take their tone sculpting farther than they would traditionally because they have these tools and because it's so fast to get there. So if most people wouldn't expect somebody to go, oh yeah, I absolutely want to control the flanger speed with my pedal, but if it's so easy, you can try it out and see if it works, and if not, you go back and oh, well, now let me see if I can't get my delay feedback. Oh, and now it's a little bit too loud. Let me drop the gain. Oh, I've done that now in 10 seconds. Right. And so if you can create tones at the speed of thought, your tones become better. That was really the goal behind the UI.
I love it. And Nick's watching some of your videos as well too. Like I've watched a couple of your demonstrations. You've done a Van Halen one actually on YouTube. I'll post that link actually as well too. And as a matter of fact, I just went in there tonight just before the show because I wanted to get your flanger settings as far as like the rate, that kind of, because I've got the EVH flanger as well too. And you put that unchained switch on and you've got it, right? So I'm a real connoisseur when it comes to getting that right flanger sound. So using your settings that you did got me pretty close to the ballpark and within 7 seconds, and I was quite happy with that. So that's one thing I can say. I answered the question myself too, the learning curve. I had it for literally, I did an unboxing today. It was a very fast unboxing. I got the UPS showed up at the door at 3 o'clock, had to get the boy at 3:30 at school. I packed it up, I unpacked it, plugged it in, dialed a couple settings, and I was like, I think I can actually make my way around this. So I was not intimidated at all, and I'll be playing all night long. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. Oh, indeed.
Yeah. So listen, let's not talk for a little bit. We're going to jump back into a lot of questions, a lot of discussion later on, but let's actually have a listen. I know you've got some patches ready, and again, it's the one I've put in the chat. People can download it, and we'll get another copy of that patch from you later on with the updated setting. So tell people what's different about the patch, unlike the link I just gave. So you made a modification to the flanger. You want to tell them about that?
So sonically, it sounds exactly the same.
Yeah.
Nick was triggering the gray flanger and the script mod phaser, and he was turning them on and off. I'm like, oh, we should make those momentary. Oh, that's right, we should. So we just made them momentary. So sonically, they sound the same, except you, in the new version, you just hold down the switch, and when you let go, it turns off. So.
Right, totally. So we want to hear some sound examples then, Eric.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's go for it. Go right ahead. Tell us what you're going to do. And
Yeah, for sure. So first off, what are we using? For the amp, we're using, we have it down as a Brit Plexi Bright, but it's a Bright Plexi. I'm going into a 412 cab with 2 Greenback 20s, so you can imagine what those are modeled after. And we're using, let's see here, I'm just going to move this around like that. And then just wanted to make a quick adjustment here. Looks like I think when we were having some fun earlier. We accidentally moved some mics around. So I just want to do this. All right, now I'm going to shoot you a tone. And so we're plugged into a 412 with greenback 20s in it, and I'm using 2 mics, one with the 57 on one and then a ribbon mic on the other. So let's just hear what we got. And what's really exciting about this tone is there's a little bit of the secret juice, let's say, that Ed's used. From the research that we've done, it shows that he used an LA2A compressor in the studio. So that's really where a lot of the tone is, kind of being squashed and getting that kind of Van Halen sound. So enough of me talking. Let's hear how it sounds. So we got things like that. If I wanted to go to like a drop D and we wanted to do something kind of like Unchained, we have. And who doesn't love some eruption as well? You throw on that phaser and and then of course, we got some slapback delay, so we'll go right back to E. And now with some slapback delay and a little bit of a flanger, we have Ain't Talking About Love. We got that kind of stuff. I could switch over to a different snapshot, which we'll talk about a little later. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool. Snapshots are presets within like 8 presets within one preset. So I could quickly go over, and now my delay is a perfect cathedral delay. So we got stuff like that, and then of course, my most favorite tone being Somebody Get Me a Doctor. But what's really cool is I could just go straight to my volume pot and clean up. And there you go.
And that's very
tubey. There's so much Van Halen to do. What to choose?
Yeah. And I mean, usually on a tube amplifier, that works very, very nicely. But in something like this, you would think that it's either going to be full blown or off. There's nowhere in between, and there is a real dynamic between from 0 to 10.
Right. Oh, there definitely is, and that true component to component modeling really shines through. Very nice and clean.
That tone you had for Somebody Get Me a Doctor was great.
Oh, really? Great. Good to hear. That's the tone that hooked me line and sinker. Just hearing that boom, coming from the cabinet. That's that tone I've always chased. And that's so just one preset, right? That's just one preset. This is all coming from the same,
I love it.
Sorry.
Well, what's funny today is the people I'm watching right now will get a kick out of this because I asked you, and I feel almost embarrassed to say this, but when we were doing our production call, I said, "Do you have a mic on a cabinet somewhere in the room?" Because that's what I was hearing. I was hearing it sounded like a big old amp. I know you're using the Helix, of course, but I was like, okay, this sounds like the mic in a room. I was hearing room, but it's not. It was direct to your mixer, and that alone it fooled my ears. So that's pretty cool.
Definitely, and that's the exact tone I sent you. So, so everyone who has access to it will be able to get this exact tone that I'm using right now.
Fantastic. And guys, if you can scroll back, I'm not sure how far the chat sometimes will only let you scroll back so far, but I'll post it in the video description down below after the show is over if you can't get it, and check that out. I know that's what I'm going to be doing after the show as well too.
Cool. Very
Fantastic.
nice.
There's a question in the chat from Carlo Santin. He's a fellow Canadian here. And I think this is a good question. This is before we get into talking about the various models of, that's my next question, is the models of the Helix. He says, I can't afford a Helix, but I'm interested in the POD HD500X. How similar in tone are the two?
The technology behind it, such that you're modeling components of an amp, is similar. The engines are notably different. The amount of DSP allocated towards each model is notably different. Admittedly, the existing reverbs that are in Helix are taken from the HD500X. We have new reverbs coming soon, but they're actually pretty different.
Okay.
The workflow is effectively Helix was born out of 165 direct requests from HD500X users.
Wow.
So so we have this tool called IdeaScale where people will go in and they'll and I'm sure it's more than, it was 165 at 1.0.
Right.
I'm sure it's pushing 200 250.
I can imagine.
So it is admittedly a different beast, but it's also 3 times the price. So
Right. So someone, if they were to jump into to the ladder like we were talking about, would it be something they could maybe start with, possibly trade in, trade up later on, and they would probably still have a nice feel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Richard Highsmith over in the chat says, the great thing about the Helix that I love is that you can take the amp that you adore, in his case, a JVM 410, JCM 2000, and a triple super lead, TSL 100, and still have a bunch of other amps on the same rig. For sure. I know personally, there's one guy, I'm going to bring his name up later on, and he's got a question Jamie Trevino was telling you about. He just did a clinic over with one of your guys, actually, at Motor City Guitar past weekend. They did a Tone Wars thing. And they were demonstrating different products, and he was showing his Helix, and he knows that thing inside and out. He's using it, if I have it correctly, he's using it through a Vi Legacy head, and he's using the power amp of the Legacy, but using the pre's of your product, and he's got tone. Like, he does an 80s tribute band, and I mean, he gets everything from your Van Halen to your, a Twisted Sister to you name it, right? And even into the metal.
Yep.
So very versatile product. He flies with it. A lot of other people fly with it. Here's another good example. You guys know this gentleman very, very well, Jeff Waters from Annihilator. And that's what brought a lot of us together here. I was talking to him just by email this afternoon. A couple times I said the guys are coming on tonight. And he said he loves the product. Hey, Jeff. He recorded this whole record with. We'll talk about that later on too. But a very versatile unit on the road. It's getting expensive to ship gear, so, I mean, a person could technically travel with that in a guitar. Am I wrong?
Oh, that people are doing it. Yeah. Even myself, with what I do for being a product specialist, I go around and we do Tone-Made Easy or Tone-Made Pros with Helix demonstrations. And it's just me, a guitar, and my Helix backpack. And Victor, how many stores do you think we'll hit in a year? Yeah, maybe 50 stores. So it's constantly on the road with me and my teammates and such, and many other touring musicians. It's a lot of fun compared to pushing the Marshall around for so many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a
It's probably
question.
one of my backstories.
Let's say the guy, one of us guys, we're gonna go do a show somewhere, and we're not gonna bring our Helix with us, but yet we've got our laptop or something. Now I know how easy it is to import a patch because I did that tonight for my first time. I downloaded an interruption one off the custom tone, and we'll talk about that later on too. And I was able to do it in 2 seconds. So let's say I got my laptop backup of a bunch of my tones, and I arrive at a gig. They've supplied a backline of the Helix. Can I, as the guitar player, just dump my stuff from my laptop onto that and have my Helix there now?
You can, as long as the receiving Helix is at least the same firmware update.
Gotcha. Yeah, it would have to be right.
So if you're using any new models or something, they obviously wouldn't work in an older machine. But if it takes a couple minutes to update. So.
Okay, so the other way around, let's look at like video games. They don't go back; they're backwards compatible. So if someone did like a version 1.2 firmware, they made a patch, and you got 2 point something, you can play the older ones. You just can't bring the other way around.
Yep.
Gotcha. I like that. So yeah, so that'd be something in a tour writer or whatever, or a backline requirement to say, make sure you have firmware version such and such on the unit.
Yep, absolutely.
Love it. Well, now maybe what we can do now is let's talk about the differences. I know the physical differences when the appearances from the Helix to the rack like we have here, the floor unit, and then the LT. Can you give us kind of a version what's different between each, and then maybe even throw a retail price point out there if you're comfortable with that?
Yeah. So Helix floor is $14.99 US map. It's sort of the we call it a superset internally is the word we use. Helix rack is Helix rack with Helix control. Helix rack is $13.99. The control is $3.99. Collectively, they have all the functionality of Helix plus word clock input, AES input, and an analog pass through for the guitar input in case you have a Korg rack tuner that you really love. Helix LT came out in April, and it's very, very similar to Helix. Doesn't have quite as many bells and whistles. The big difference is it's missing the scribble strips above each foot switch, but we have a new performance view where you actually see what's there, so it effectively acts like the scribble strips. It doesn't have quite as many ins and outs. It's missing the mic pre. It has 2 effects loops instead of 4. It has 1 additional expression pedal input instead of 2. It doesn't have SPDIF in and out. And I think 1 or 2 other things.
Right.
We're pretty close. It's missing the dedicated headphone knob, but we wanted it to be, a full comprehensive tool set. Just missing a couple of the fancier things. So.
Right. And all tones are interchangeable. Like I wrote this tone on my LT, sent it to you, and you easily loaded it into your rack.
Yeah. So it's simple.
So cool stuff. Yeah.
And if somebody has the plugin, they can load it right into the plugin, and now they can use it in Logic or Pro Tools or Cubase or Persona's
GarageBand.
Garage, you're talking about native, correct?
Yeah.
I just downloaded the trial that the other day too, and I put that into Logic as well. That worked pretty well, and it took me a minute. I was actually just hearing clean guitar. I had to do something a little bit different on my routing. I wasn't getting the processing. Once I got the processing working, it worked great. So there's a 15-day trial, and I think it's 15-day right on that for people to try it out before they buy it.
Yeah, just be really careful with the input because it's expecting an instrument level signal. So if you have a bunch of normalized guitar tracks in your DAW and you apply it, it's almost like running a keyboard into a guitar amp. You're going to do it. So treat it like you would treat a real amp and real pedals, and you'll be great.
Fantastic. The next question I had for you guys is we obviously just talked about how versatile it is to take on the road and touring, and a lot of guys are doing that. And I shouldn't just say guys and girls using it worldwide. Jeff Waters, we just talked about using it with Annihilator in the studio, and as far as I know, he's from what he tells me, he pretty much recorded everything, like the leads, rhythms, everything on that with the Helix. How many people are you finding now with your artists and people you just hear through the forums and things like that are using it as not only maybe a little bit in the studio, but maybe as a major staple in the studio?
We're sort of outside of A&R. I know they're always in the process of signing new artists and getting them in the hands of new artists. I do know we went and we showed it to Mark Mothersbaugh, who's scoring the new Thor Ragnarok film. And I guess it's all over the score, Ragnarok score. You didn't know that? It's cool, huh? Right?
Your face.
I guess it's on it's all over the next Black Eyed Peas record. So I mean, it's sort of it pops up on all sorts of places, on all sorts of genres of
Allman
music.
Brothers, gosh, yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Well, it's a versatile tool. And another thing too, a lot of times, especially for independent bands, budget is a lot of bands. It's tough in the studio, and so instead of wasting time, if you've got an engineer that's kind of a rookie or new, whatever, taking all that time miking cabinets, getting the right sound, plug in and go, dial into a Marshall or an EVH or whatever you want, and you got it, and you can recall it exactly again if you have to come back another day and do some other tracks again. It's no more mic placement over here. So I think there's some huge godsends there. And you fooled me earlier as well too. When I talked to you this afternoon, I thought that was a real amp. So
that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah. Still getting a couple. I wonder if you can just have your guy bring up Eric just a little bit more as well too. Still getting a couple of people saying they're having a hard time here. I'm very, very sorry, but just a little low.
Oh, no worries.
I'm getting you really good, Nick. You're coming in hot as can be. It could be the mic headset, maybe.
Maybe give him a little more gain. I don't know. Oh, okay. You just have.
We're at KL line 6.
That's not too bad. That'll work for sure.
All the time.
Love it. So what are your thoughts here, you guys? This is gonna be a great question for you as well too, and this gets brought up on the show many times. I've talked to other people from other manufacturers as well too. That talk about tube versus solid state versus software versus this and that. Everyone has this myth that you have to have a tube amplifier to get that great tone. Give me your thoughts on that.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, fire away.
So we're all tube amp geeks too. We all have our favorite amps, and our significant others don't like the fact that we have lots and lots of amps. But so we don't see modeling as a replacement for amps at all. Really, it's how you want to use it. So I love hooking Helix up to an amp in 4-cable method, and then I can swap out the preamp with the modeled preamp. It can be used however you want. Most of the time, if somebody bemoans modeling sort of without any context, it's difficult because you don't know if you're talking to a hardcore studio engineer who spent his entire life understanding the nuances of mic placement and knowing exactly where to place a microphone and he just has golden ears, or if it's some dude who read on a YouTube forum, modeling sucks, you need a tube amp, and I've never used one, I have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm just parroting the same stuff. There's a huge disparity between those two guys, so you have to qualify who you're talking to, but then you have to figure out where the problems that may have lied, and we found a lot of times it's in the playback system. So when somebody is comparing a modeler, if they're listening to on headphones, it's obviously a very, very different experience than a roaring 4x12, pointing at the back of your knees. Even if you have the best, full range speaker, or if you have $30,000 studio monitor pointing at your head, it's still a totally different experience than that amp. And modeling it can't defy the laws of physics. What it can do is it can completely nail the signal path between the guitar input and the preamp output, as well as the power amp input and the power amp output, because that can be measured and then compared against the model. And when you do, double blind ABX listening tests, and you can fool almost everybody all the time, at that point, the proof is in the pudding. It's in the measurements, it's in the numbers, but at the same time, you're still at the whim of how you're hearing a modeler versus the real amp. So you can't expect your 4-inch computer speakers to feel like you have a huge Bogner in the room. So it's a lot of education, it's a lot of curbing expectations, it's a lot of politics, but the big takeaway is, if you are the type of guitarist who's used to an amp, that doesn't preclude modeling at all. I mean, use modeling with an amp if you feel that there's a benefit. So you can still take advantage of all the effects, you can take advantage of all the preamps, you take advantage of all of the routing, all of the recording capabilities. I have a friend who's in a Metallica cover band, and they have Laney amps, and they were renting JC120s for the beginning of Nothing Else Matters.
Oh, just for one spot.
And it was madness, and so they ended up getting a couple helices, and instead they have one switch that toggles out the Laney preamp with the JC120 preamp. They still use the power amp in the cabin of their Laney, but that solved their problem right there. So they're using a combination of modeling and real amps, so they can scratch all of the itches they need to scratch. Right. And products not just like Helix, but like Amplifier and Fractals, Axe-Fx, and even Kemper. I mean, these are solutions that it's not an all or nothing proposition. It doesn't have to, you have to do modeling with a PA speaker, or, no, you have to get a pedal board and amps. There's all sorts of different solutions in between.
Oh, of course.
I love it. And in a case like my example, what I would be using it for is strictly for my live broadcast. Like, I've got a 412 at the back just behind me. It's mic'd up, and I pan them hard left and right. But there's times where I want to carry a live broadcast or a demonstration late into the evening, and I don't have to fire that thing up. So that's where I'm looking forward to it. Just straight into the Helix, straight into my mixer. And no, I know we can do it exactly into the computer as well as an interface, and that's my next question for you. Someone that doesn't have a big mixer like I have off to the side or any mixer at all, and they want to do some recording into their DAW of choice, can you guys tell me how the Helix can be interfaced to the computer for that exact purpose?
Oh yeah. So there's an 8-in, 8-out USB audio interface as well as MIDI that can be used with any traditional DAW, Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase. It has a couple cool tricks where you can choose which physical input is sent to the computer dry simultaneously. So the way that works is if you want to record your guitar into, say, your favorite DAW, you can record both the processed guitar sound that you hear with the amps and the effects and everything on one track, and at the same time you can record a dry signal, just the guitar. And then later what it allows you to do is to take that dry guitar track, say like, I love this, but the gain was a little high, or oh man, I've changed the tempo of the song in this at the very end, and now the delay is a little bit off. Okay, let's go in, and you can tweak the sound in Helix, route the dry track back through Helix and then back in, and so you don't have to try to play that part that you completely nailed. And that's an additional advantage to the plugin as well, because in that case you don't even have to route back through Helix. You can just change a parameter in the plugin and you're done. So
if I understand it correctly, because I don't understand it that well, so by recording 2 tracks at a time, one affected, one as a raw track, it's almost like a non-destructive. You could apply an effect to it after the fact. You don't like it, it's not destructive, it's not baked into it.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. I like that.
To the first track, but the second track can then be used elsewhere.
Okay, I like that. Very, very cool. Neil Banbury in the chat has a good question, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear it. He says, was wondering how licensing works with these products. Example, Helix, Fractal, Kemper, as you mentioned as well to the other manufacturers. When you or they put, like, say, a Marshall JCM 800 profile in the firmware, do you pay a licensing to the manufacturer? I think in a way that's why you name them something different. Kind of, you'd know it's a Marshall type thing. That's how you get away with it.
Yep. No. There's no at least as far as in all the countries we distribute Helix, you can't patent a tone.
Gotcha.
Per se. And we also we're very, very cognizant of that because we've been ripped off ourselves.
Yeah. I'll say.
So we and we have great respect for the companies that create the gear that we model. And in many respects, we've had manufacturers hit us up and go, "Thank you so much for modeling this amp." We just had this huge bump in sales because people saw this and they're like, "I had no idea this amp existed. It sounded great. Let me go check out the original thing." And that makes us really happy because we want people to buy more pedals. We want them to buy more amps. We want people to play more guitar, whether it's Line 6 gear or not. We need more guitarists right now. So.
Oh, agreed.
Fantastic. One of the guys I brought up earlier in the show was Jamie Trevino. He goes by The Law here on YouTube, and he was at a rehearsal this evening, and he says got done early. He says he made a new sound tonight using the SLO preamp tonight. It's absolutely awesome. I'm going to share you guys his contact information. You got to check him out later. What he's doing for the brand, absolutely amazing. He knows it inside and out. Every time I post a question, he's Facebooking me saying, "Oh, you can do this," and blah blah blah. So it's fantastic, and it might even take us to the next question. Let's talk about the custom tone. I downloaded, like I said, about 4 or 5 patches there tonight. You have to register your product and whatnot to use it. But tell us a little bit about custom tone and what people can expect as a benefit from that.
Yeah, definitely. With custom tone, it's a whole community of Line 6 owners, and so if you like you get home after work and you just want to, play a U2 song, or, maybe it's the Scorpions and you're going, man, I don't have a U2 preset or a Scorpions preset. Well, you just jump on your computer, type in that tone or, that song or genre. And there's so many tones that pop up, like how we were talking earlier. You got your Helix, you checked out custom tone, and there was instantly an eruption patch ready to go. So you didn't have to spend any time. Like how you were saying, it's great to be the musician and not have to jump over and be, sound engineer. When when inspiration strikes, you want to instantly go and play and have a great sound. And so that's what custom tone does for us. It's a great way for the community to share tones amongst each other. Users on custom tone can rate a tone, so you can see, oh, you know, there's 4 stars or 5 stars or 3 stars on a specific tone, so it kind of, you know, gives you an idea of how it's going to be once you pull it up. And I think that's a great benefit. You know, it connects a lot of guitar players together to share tones and get the sound you're looking for quick and easy.
I love it. And something I've suggested to people too with other competing products as well too. Sometimes don't necessarily be scared away as soon as you download a patch and it may, if it says Eddie Van Halen this and you listen to it and you're like, ooh, that's a little too shrill. Correct me if I'm wrong. Some people might be writing that patch with their headphones. Some people might be writing it through a tube amp, through the preamp, through the effects loop or something, or they might be doing it with their little laptop speakers. So don't be scared away right off. Like maybe he or she's written something cool. You just need to tweak it to your listening environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, at best,
yeah.
Every preset is just a starting point for the person with the processor to make it their own.
Everybody sounds different. You know, I could pick up Eddie Van Halen's riff, you know, his guitar going into his amps and everything, and I'm still going to sound like me. Mm-hmm. And so your listening environment, how you approach it, because you know, someone over here may be able to get that exact Van Halen sound because of their playing style and how they set it up. But if I try to play Van Halen through it, it may not sound that way just because how I play, and everyone plays different. So, yeah. Very much so. Very
cool. The question from Jamie Trevino. This is, I think, a pretty good technical question. He says, at the Line 6 IdeaScale site, a lot of the upvoted ideas have been in review for some time. Are you still actively syncing development suggestions there, or is there a better forum for making software, hardware improvements and/or additions?
No, we check it at least weekly.
Okay.
I think I actually went in this morning and closed out
Yeah, you were saying.
A couple hundred of them. No, IdeaScale is still a really, really great place for us to at least get metrics. And we're collecting input, obviously, from artists, from online forums, from Facebook, from people yelling at us on the side of the street. But at that point, you can't say, "Hey, guess what? This guy yelled at me on the street. We should totally do this."
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean anything. But when we can take something like IdeaScale and say, "Look, these 15 disparate stories are all sort of similar, and collectively it's X number of votes. Let's make sure that we prioritize features, prioritize models, and that sort of thing." Unfortunately, we're not able to constantly go in and talk about what we're working on.
Right, of course.
IdeaScale isn't actually our tool, we license it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are functions in IdeaScale that we likely won't take advantage of, like, oh, yes, we're working on this. So people shouldn't treat it as a crystal ball to figure out what we're working on. It's more of a one-way street. But it's important to know that we do check it. You know, I mean, at least collectively, the team should check it every week.
Yeah.
I'm going on there at least every couple of days just to make sure that we didn't miss anything cool. And what's nice is that we have other product management tools where we can copy and paste the text straight into a story, assign it to an engineer, and they can see it and maybe be working on it within seconds.
I like it.
So it's a really efficient system we have here. And it's not like we just have to argue and like, oh, let's move this, or nobody likes that, stop it, Eric.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty open, really collaborative environment here.
Totally.
I heard you use it. I heard you say you closed a couple or something like that. So with me not knowing the IdeaScale, I went to the site. Obviously, I couldn't log in because I'm not a member, but I went there when Jamie gave me the link to it. Is it kind of like a ticket system, where like you like assign tickets to people, or you close them when you're done? Like this is going to move on to production or something. You close them off. So that was like a ticket system type of thing, trouble ticket.
Well, closing them such that yes, they've been looked at by the team, and been brought into our metric system.
Gotcha.
Where people can actually see the actual numbers. For a while, we would actually close things out if they were implemented, and then people would be like, well, yeah, but I didn't want that amp. I wanted the amp with the 12AX7s, so right. Not closed. So like, okay. Where it's at. So there are a lot of duplicate stories, but at the same time, we also have competitors that are looking at IdeaScale, and we don't want to give them too many ideas as well.
I never thought of that.
Do you get some secret shoppers in there sometimes?
Secret shoppers, lots of secret. Well, couple secret shoppers. Yeah.
There you go. I guess you can't prevent it, right? It happens. Even in retail, you're going to get the guys coming in and looking at what the prices are on the shelf and that kind of stuff, and going back and reporting back to their superiors. It happens. NAM and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Here's another question here as well, too. Now, this is a little bit above my knowledge when it comes to the product. This is from the Facebook group as well, too. This is from Max Mellinger. He says, please ask if global IR or cab and stereo for XLR out and quarter-inch out with cab IR is possible. That would make me happy because I use a real cab on stage and want direct front of house with IR and stereo. All of my sends returns are full. Did I make any sense by saying that?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do that with one caveat, and the word global was used. You can do it, but all of the amps and cabs are going to be per preset in Helix.
Okay.
So yes. So in this case, all he would have to do is create a split, or take that IR block that he would be running to the front of house.
Right.
Press action to pick it up, drop it down to the second path, and then take the merge, drop that down, and now you can assign that to 2B out XLRs to the front of house, and then path 1A output could be set to. It's easy to. It takes 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
It takes way more time to explain something than it does to actually do it, but yes, it's absolutely possible.
Okay, good. I'm glad for this gentleman for sure. And we're going to talk into some kind of advanced routing things in a few moments as well too. But another question, some really good Facebook comments coming in tonight. This one's from Dom John. He says, is Line 6 considering online courses to improve production of sounds for new users? I like that idea.
It's just a matter of time.
Right.
People, resources, and I just came from a big meeting with a bunch of German dealers right before this. I have to go to an event right after this. So yes, it's something we would love to do. It's just a matter of time and resources. Luckily, we have amazing users who are creating a lot of content for us, and we really appreciate all the work that they do in proselytizing not just Line 6 specifically, but modeling in general. And the advantages and disadvantages, and the story is getting out there, and people are starting to embrace and understand all of those advantages, and we'll do whatever we possibly can to as well. And there are a ton of how-to videos on our website too, and we should link to those.
Definitely. And you even spoke on how you saw some of those tone-made videos that we've done online, but the team that I'm on, a product specialist, we actually tour the U.S. and do these events called Tone Made Easy or Tone Made Pro. Tone Made Pro, we use Helix, and we go and speak about everything from what Jimi Hendrix to what James Hetfield was using. And we have a lot of fun doing those. If you check out line6.com/events, you'll be able to see really where we're going to be. And we have guys on all 4 corners of the U.S., so more than likely there is an event right by you. So that's maybe a link we could share towards the end, and everyone could check that out, and maybe we'll see a few of you at a Tone Made Easy or Tone Made Pro. That's
fantastic, and YouTube has been a great resource as well too. And one thing I do find, everyone from novices to a serious pro veterans, phenomenal tutorials out there. And one thing I do find about the community, when I say the community, your community through your site and all the fan communities out there, everyone is generally really cool. And a lot of times in this business, it's not always the case. Like I remember joining these forums and asking a couple questions. I said, guys, I'm new. I am completely new to not the Line 6 brand, but to the Helix brand. I mean, I grew up using some Line 6 products when you guys first really kind of got into the market, and I haven't used them for many years after. So I'm a newbie, right? And I tell people that, and no one's flaming me. No one's giving me like, okay, get out of here, blah, blah, blah. Welcome with open arms. So I do find the community is a nice group. And here, I got something. Let me share with you. Let me tell you how to do that. And they're not doing it for, some people sell things and stuff like that, but they're not doing it for any real gain other than to see you happy with the product.
That's great.
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me a lot of the morale we have here. Everyone's just with open arms and, and just good people, you know? And good people use our
Well,
products.
we all hate you, though.
Shit.
I love it. Cloreen Baconskin in the chat has a question. Says, I own a Helix. There's a tone in my. I'm trying to get Beautiful Imperfections by Guthrie Govan. It's been a slippery one. Any advice on getting a sound? Can you give him maybe a couple of pointers, amp wise, he might go towards?
Gosh, even though I know Guthrie Govan, he's an amazing player. It's just unfortunately I haven't dived in deep into his tone, so I honestly have no idea what the guy's using.
Might be something on custom tone.
Yeah, I would check custom tone before anything. Right off the top of my head, I'm sorry, that's just one guy I haven't dabbled in.
No problem. Quentin James, and I almost hate to say this because he's a good friend. He says NAMM 2018, maybe a new Helix combo, and I won't even say anything because I don't know what's coming down the road, and I don't even want to speculate. But that's a good suggestion. I like that. That sounds cool.
No. Helix combo is something that we get on occasion.
Yeah.
The trick with a Helix combo is it would likely be solid state.
Yeah.
And it's really tough to charge over $1,000 for a solid state amp.
Yeah.
And if it were to have a proper Helix engine in it, and be a cabinet and set of drivers that were Helix level or would do the Helix engine justice,
right,
it'd be easily over $2,000, I think.
Oh yeah.
We haven't done proper numbers,
no,
but it's as soon as we say yes, but how much would you pay for it? As soon as it goes over $2,000, like, oh, okay, never mind. So it's something that we do talk about. At that point, though, in the end, the footprint ends up being about the same, whether you have Helix running it into an amp or if you have a Helix combo with Helix control and expression power.
Yeah.
There's one extra AC cable that you would need to run in lieu of the like the FBV cable.
Yeah.
But other than that, the setup time is about the same. So it's something we haven't dismissed altogether, but it's something we continue to talk about.
Okay, fair enough. Mystery Music has a question, and you guys also mentioned a couple of the competing products. You meant Fractal and Kemper and things like that. And here's an honest question. This would probably come up a lot. How do you guys think the Helix stacks up against Kemper or Axe Effects? I'd just like to hear your input on that.
I simply by having that question asked, it's an honor. We have huge, massive respect for Cliff and Christoph and their companies, and we think they're doing amazing things to push modeling forward. We kind of see them as being on the same team as we are. We see them less as competitors and more as cool. Let's all do and push each other forward and make guitar really cool and unique and fun. And Helix is sort of a different approach. Obviously, the profiling engine that Kemper has is very, very different from subcomponent modeling that both Fractal and Line 6 does. I think there's room for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question.
That's great. That's a great honest answer. Just like earlier too, when you said, like, this is one thing where I really respect your contributions this evening, because you had mentioned earlier, I mean, if you were just here to sell the product, which obviously is a goal, but I mean, you wouldn't say that modeling is not a replacement. So you said that's the first thing you said, is not a replacement. So that is huge kudos and respect to you, and the fact that you say that you're honored to be in the same conversation with these other manufacturers. I mean, you're on a roll. I love it. It's great. And a couple of people here in the chat are giving some really honest, unbiased information, because a couple of these people have all three products. Perfect example here is Luis Rodriguez says, all three offer their own thing. All three sound sick. I own all three. I like Helix best because I was able to craft my tones to sound most tube-like. Nice. Very nice comment. And Tazmax 2002 says, I have owned the Kemper and Axe Effects, and honestly, they're all great. So nice. So they're being honest, and that's one thing. It's nice when some people are bandwagon jumpers. This person is, and I'm not saying that, but okay. So I had the Helix, and then I was great, and I jumped over to this. I like this one now. The other one was no good, or vice versa. These people are being honest because they own all three products. So he says, I own the Kemper and the Axe effects, and they're all great. I just think the Helix makes the end goal so much easier than the other two to get a tone that's yours. Love it. Very nice. Nicely said.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to hear that.
Yeah, thank you.
Here's the question I have for you, and it's because I don't know the answer to this. Well, I'm getting a feel for it, but there's many more people that do not know this. For someone that's never used devices that use impulse responses and things like that, tell us for the layman out there, tell us what an impulse response is and how it is integrated, or how you integrate it software-wise into the Helix, and what it does for each patch.
Yeah, impulse responses are very short wave files that capture the
sonic fingerprint.
Yeah. The best way to layman's term, like a sonic fingerprint of an audio system. It doesn't have to be a cab. It could be a cathedral. It could be
acoustic
a
guitar.
transistor. It could be a circuit. It could be any type of audio system. With Helix, it's primarily, most people are going to be putting in cab impulses. The advantage of IRs isn't that they're inherently better or worse. I mean, because all the cabs that we have in Helix are IRs as well. Somebody in an earlier meeting today had asked, what's up with cabs? What's up with IRs? And the big advantage with IRs is really quantity and the ability to find exactly what you want. The example I gave is you buy an Akai sampler and it comes with a CD-ROM of samples, or you buy a contact and it comes with a contact library. But if you want the world's best violin sample, you go to the one company who totally nails that violin sample, because that's the thing that's most important to you. And so then when you go and you buy that exact violin sample, or in this case, that exact cab with that exact mic, or that combination of mics in that room, you get exactly what you want. So IRs give you just a massive wealth of a pool of data to be able to pick exactly what you want.
Right.
That's the big thing. It opens up the ability to get every possible mic, cab, speaker combination, distance, axis, and you can surf forever, seemingly, until you find exactly what you want.
But it isn't something that's a dire necessity. You don't have to have an impulse response.
No, it's one of those things where once you've exhausted the cabs that are in Helix, once you've messed around with the different mics and the different mic placements, which make a huge difference, massive difference. At that point, they don't have this cab. I want to get this cab. They don't have this particular mic or this particular distance or this particular vintage of cab. I can go and I can do a search for it, and I can find it from Ownhammer or Red Wires or Sigma or any of these companies that make great stuff.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing. We're getting a lot of nice comments on your guitar, actually, Nick. And James is actually talking. He's commented in the thing in the chat to tell people about it. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about that guitar.
Yeah, definitely. What we're using now is a Pacifica. We're using a Yamaha Pacifica. The two pickups we have in here, in the bridge, we have a Seymour JB, and in the neck, we have a Seymour Jazz. And that's really, what model was this again? It's a Pacifica 611, Yamaha Pacifica 611, and it's, it's a great guitar.
Yeah.
It doesn't squeal. How's this? I'm just playing. That's for you, Vic. No, but yeah, it definitely. But just like Eddie Van Halen's tone, he didn't have a lot of gain. Mm-hmm. It was more clean than it was distorted, if you were. But Ed definitely has that pinch harmonic down.
That's where everybody
But no,
goes
it's
wrong.
a great guitar. It feels really great. To be honest, when I first got this Pacifica several weeks ago, I was like, okay, Pacifica, let's see how it goes. And I've had a couple days with it, and I've been really, really surprised at on how it feels. And just the tone that it has, especially with the Seymours in it. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I really like this guitar.
They're fun, and I told you about off the air. I told you about the one I have here, the 921 jumbo frets, the warmoth neck on it. The real nice cutaway on the back. Because I think it was if I should know this. I don't know the name, but I think it was Rich Lasner, whatever. He used to work for Ibanez, moved over to Yamaha back in the day, and so he took some of the engineering design to it. A beautiful, beautiful guitar. The only thing I didn't like about it, and it's not a flaw, it's just something in manufacturing, was the 3mm lock nuts aren't 3mm. They are a weird size, like a 5 or something like that. No guitar player usually has one of those kicking around, so you lose that wrench and you're kind of, SOL, But they're beautiful guitars, yeah. And you seem to do it justice on it. You use that same guitar in the video online too, didn't you? The demo you did.
I was using a different model of guitar, okay. But depending on which video you saw, I think if you're referring to the Eddie Van Halen video, I was using a different branded guitar. But it wasn't Line 6 or Yamaha at all. It was just a different brand in there, which is also another fun guitar. But in the stuff you'll be seeing coming, we're using more like Helix minutes, for example, where it's quick little minute tutorials on Helix and such. You'll be seeing us using more Yamaha guitars there. And like I said, the more time I have with it, the more I love it.
I love it. And someone did mention it, and I have to apologize. I didn't get the person's name. I saw the Helix Minute a few minutes ago, and I wanted to bring that up. So you brought that up. That's very, very cool. And that's something that I suggest as well, too, guys. I have a link down below in the description to all the Line 6's properties, but subscribe to the YouTube for sure, especially if you're either on the fence about getting a Helix or one of their products, or you have them now, because when you guys do these videos and publish them, we all know what it's like to get notifications. You'll be notified right away when there's something posted. Go grab it and learn. And I know that's what I'll be doing. I'll be looking forward to notifications. Another good friend of mine and another Line 6 a Helix user, DJ Asterisk, says, will Helix get a tone match feature in the future, or is it even possible?
It's possible. That's not to say it is in our list of thousands of things that we could or could not get to. I don't know. Tone match, it just depends on how loudly people demand it. My personal feeling on it is it's been done, and we kind of like to pave our own path and do things a little differently. But we've also put in things because people demanded it. So it's a
catch-22. Yeah.
I like that answer, though. The fact that you say it's been done, and it's one of those things where maybe, is a reinvention of the wheel necessary? If the wheel's working okay, it's keeping you on the road, and just focus on what you do best. Like some people, manufacturers, and this is not a slam to any manufacturer, this goes to anything, and it could be a business, a retail business. If you try to do everything, you're going to do a bunch of them okay, and some of them not so good. But if you focus on a certain, actually, here's a better example. I like watching cooking shows with the wife, and you have a menu. Chef Ramsay comes in, you have 90 items on your menu. You shorten that down to 15. You've got a nice, every meal is going to be good, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Andrew Emery in the chat has a question, or not a question, a comment, which I have to wholeheartedly agree with. He says, Helix has the edge with display technology. And my vision is really bad. I need glasses, and I like the fact that it has a full color display. I was joking around earlier today telling the wife and my son, I said, it's about the size of an iPad mini practically. Is it about a 7-inch screen? And tell us a little bit about the screen and why you guys want full color, whereas I think everyone else is like a monochrome, correct?
No, I mean there are other products that have color screens now too, and you're going to see a lot of color screens coming out in the next few years because the prices are getting a lot lower. So, and we had done a color screen in our M20D stage-gate mixer, which was a touch screen. We've talked about this quite a bit online. The original Helix, the first iteration we had designed, had a touch screen on it, and people didn't like it, and we sort of knew, okay, well, if they don't like it now, we'll put a big color screen on it for this one, and then we'll make sure the next one has a big color screen, so at least they'll be used to the big screen.
Right.
So there's always this weird 10-year roadmap method to our madness that we're always trying to think way into the future. And when we were talking about how many blocks we needed to show and how much feedback the user needed to have to know exactly where they're at in the song, which blocks are active, and with all the M-class processors, the color foot switches were really important, so we just took that to the next level, and we wanted to make sure that it tied the switches into the screen. In some respects, we kind of wish we hadn't had such a large screen because we want people to really focus on the switches and treat it as a pedal board instead of focusing on the signal path, if that makes sense. So we'd almost prefer that it was just scribble strips and switches and, oh, there's my delay. I touch my delay and I tweak it.
Yeah.
As opposed to thinking, where is the delay in my signal path? And now you're suddenly taking your mind from the musician's musician side suddenly to an engineer side, and we're trying to separate those two and keep people in the moment, if you will.
I saw some good videos, and I wish I could quote who they were. I mean, I've watched so many. I'm kind of brain fried from all the videos I've consumed in the past 2 weeks. But a couple of people I watched on YouTube, they're saying they started off by talking about people had complained that it wasn't a touchscreen, and then he goes on to show how easy it is and how quickly you'll be happy that it's not a touchscreen with the joystick and everything the way it works. I figured it out pretty quickly as well. Now I have to dive in a little bit more, but if I can do it in 5 to 10 minutes, anyone that's been using products like this a lot longer than I have will have no problem with it whatsoever.
Well, we have so many potential blocks in the signal flow. The blocks would be too small to reliably touch the right one too. So there's so much feedback on the screen at any given time. We'd either have to blow the screen way up, or we would have to just have fewer blocks available, and we would artificially limit what people can do because of fat fingers, which seems unfair.
Yep.
So we're rethinking how do we want to approach the next one, and that, it's still many years from now, but but these are the kind of conversations we have all the time.
I can see it right now. I can see the first complaint.
Voice activation. There we go. Hey Siri, more gain.
Yeah. We have never enough gain. I can see it right now. So you okay, guys?
This preset sucks.
That's right. Okay.
Oh, that's awesome. All right.
Yeah, so you offer the first touchscreen, and then as soon as it's released, people say, I'm pushing a button, I'm pushing it, and I'm getting 3 different things happening at one time. Well, you want a touchscreen, it's only so big, right? So
Right.
Exactly. James Taylor says, are there any plans to extend the Variax range beyond the Shuriken guitar?
Yeah, I mean, Variax isn't, it's not
done.
It's not done by any stretch of the imagination. No, it's something that it's something that we're a whole hog into.
Oh yeah.
And it's something we love. It's a pet project for a lot of us. Absolutely.
One of our children.
One of our children.
It's one of our child.
There you go. Will it have a Floyd Rose?
What's that?
Will it have a Floyd Rose?
Oh. Is that something people want?
I would like it, but I mean, I know you're not going to make one off, but that'd be kind of cool. I used your
like a whammy bar.
Yeah, I used your very first Variax that you ever had, and it wasn't my guitar. It was in the studio, and there was a particular track when I recorded my album that I needed a 12-string. I remember using like a George Harrison type patch, and a nice, even a sitar patch that I needed for a certain sound. Very first model that ever come out, and to this day, I still like it. It sounds very realistic.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
James Burwell, we're getting close to wrap up too. We got about 15 more minutes before we wrap up. But James Burwell says, and he says, and I'm referring to Nick, does he have his EVH stuff up on Custom Tone? Do you have your own section up there, or is it?
I do not. There, you may find 1 or 2 tones that are Van Halen-esque from me, and my handle on there, my name is just N Bell.
Okay.
And so any tone I've ever posted, you'll be able to find that from there. But from how long ago I posted that tone, and as us guitarists do, we're always learning and doing more and more research to refine our sound. I've picked up a couple tidbits since then, and so this tone that I have now, which I'm just naming EVH, I'll share this on a custom tone tonight.
Okay, good.
And make it available, and because I feel that this tone, is hitting home a bit more than possibly the tone I posted, over a year ago when that video was done.
And it has a couple new models.
And it has new models in here. There's some stuff. Yeah, exactly. There's some stuff in here model-wise that may not be in that tone posted over a year ago, because we've released, as we do, we've released several updates since a year ago. And so I'll make sure to share that up there. Again, the handle, my name, just N Bell. Any tone I post, you'll find it by typing in N Bell, and this tone is just named EVH.
Pretty simple to find. Fantastic. Good. We'll look forward to that. Here's a question. This is from myself as the novice user. So I downloaded a couple patches, Knife and Custom Tone, and I really liked them. And I found some things like all of us, we might like certain things about it. I know certain ingredients of the recipe, but we might want to pull something out. And one of the patches I downloaded, just the delays were a little too predominant for me. So I wanted to bring them out a little bit in the mix, and then I didn't know how to save them. Hooking it up to the computer with the USB cable, I was able to do that, no problem. But if I make some tweaks on here, add a couple more effects, like different elements, can I save it on the Helix without having to hook up to the computer to save it?
Oh,
Save twice.
yeah.
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
Fantastic. Okay. So, because I makes sense.
Read the cheat sheet. After tonight, when you're in bed, and your wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I promised line 6 that I would read this.
You know what? I even talked to my son about that. I showed him the cheat sheet actually, and I think it's in the box up there actually right now. But that's great because I don't like to read manuals, and it makes sense because not everyone's going to have a computer beside them when they're out in the field, right? So,
right.
Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate that. So that's the question on the EVH. On the custom tone, we've got that as well. So here's a question. So a lot of people, and I know this for a fact, some of my friends using the Helix product with their tube amps. I mentioned Jamie earlier using his Vi Legacy 3 amp. A lot of the guys watching this show are EVH guys who run in either the PV5150s or Eddie's brand, the Fender EVH gear. Tell us a little bit about the 4-cable method. I know there's a wealth of good videos out there on your sites and now all over YouTube and the forums. Explain what the 4-cable method is and how people can still use either their amp, totally use this as effects, or maybe use the power amp of their head and use this as a preamp. So maybe explain that in kind of a short version.
Yeah. So the how 4-cable method's been around a lot. It allows people to have effects before the preamp section of their amplifier, but also place other effects between the preamp and the power amp section of their amplifier. For example, most people believe that compressors and drives and wah sounds better before going into an amp, getting pushed into the preamp, whereas time-based effects, delays, reverb, sometimes some
modulation,
mods, a lot of people, at least that's the belief, is that they sound better after the preamp but before the power amp. So you can do that even with real pedals. You hook up those post effects in the effects loop of your amp, but then you take your drives and your compressors and you put those straight, you run your guitar straight into them and then straight into the amp. If you're running a processor like this that can run many effects at once, you need some way to be able to differentiate between the effects that go before your amp and those that go between your preamp and your power amp. And with Helix and a lot of other products, we're not the only one that do this, but you can use the effects loop as a method of getting in and routing certain effects in two physical spaces in your rig, so you get the best of both worlds. The advantage here, however, is that because Helix also has preamps and real amplifiers, is that because of the routing, because you can take that effects loop that's effectively enabling all of those post effects to your amplifier, you can assign that effects loop switch along with a real preamp model in Helix. And so hitting that one switch will effectively unroute the preamp from your amp and enable a modeled amp in Helix. So with one switch, you're toggling between a digital amp and a real amp, and with 10 seconds of leveling, you can get it to sound really seamless. And so even if you love the sound of your amp, if you want to try a different flavor, it's really easy with to just let me see what it sounds like with a Bogner preamp, or let's see what it sounds like with the clean channel, the Archon, something like that.
Totally.
So it's just a really flexible way to do that. If you happen to have 2 amps in stereo, you could also run 7-cable method. If you have 3 or 4 amps, say, surrounding you could even do 10 or 13 cable method here too. If you just want to be stupid. Yes.
I love it. Well, what I do a lot of times too is with my 5150s back here, I love running, and it sounds silly, but I play a lot of them on the Clean channel, and I use the 5150, the MXR overdrive, the Eddie Van Halen overdrive, and it sounds really, really good through the Clean channel, especially the new Lunchbox. It has a nice Clean channel. So here's where a lot of people, I think, might, and myself included, until now, would think, okay, so you have the effects loops you can use on the Helix, and one would not normally want to run a distortion pedal through a loop, but just because you think of it's a loop, you just explain it very well with the routing, you can run it through the loop and just tell you where you want that MXR 5150 overdrive now to go in the Helix.
Exactly. You can just pick it up, move it, and now it's suddenly in the loop of your amp instead of before the amp. And that triggered something too. And there's so many cool new preamp pedals that are out there. All of the amps in Helix also have preamp versions that you can choose. So even if you're just using it as a pedal board, no 4-cable method, just going straight into the amp, pull up. Somebody online earlier today was talking about using the divided by 13 as a preamp going into their Fender, and they said it sounded amazing. So,
oh yeah.
So you can treat the amps like a preamp pedal.
Yeah.
My favorite's still the dark glass B7K bass thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous.
Interesting. I'll have to try that.
Love it.
On guitar too.
Okay. It's like the whole basement story, I guess, right? Yeah.
And over in the chat, you got a +1 on the Floyd Rose on the Variax. So
Right.
there you go. I think you might see a few more. I'm gonna send some of my buddies your way. Floyd Rose.
Should have brought the Variax guys.
Oh, I know, right?
We can always do
Well,
another
if it was
show
up to me, I'd put a Floyd Rose on an acoustic guitar if I could, you know.
You know what? I've seen it done.
Variax, you use the acoustic.
There you go. Yeah. All right.
If you guys catch some of my shows, you'll know I talk about this product, and you may know about them. It's a product I'm very close to. fu-tone.com. Adam Reaver there. He's a guitar doctor for everybody. And he makes a lot of upgrades and he makes his own bridges as well too, but titanium products and brass blocks, all that kind of stuff. But someone, either he did it or one of his guitar friends did it for him. He's got a nice acoustic classical guitar hanging on his wall, and it's got a Floyd Rose mounted to it, and it's operable.
Oh wow, dude!
Wow.
Yeah, it's
I wonder how it gets back into tune.
I don't even think it. I think you might be able to move it. It's just physically there. I don't think he plays it, but it's there. Yeah, but it's pretty cute. Great. You have to see it. We even talked about the mini guitars, which you can see above my head, where people are saying, do they make little mini brass blocks for those things? And, obviously it's a little novelty, but it's pretty cool. So our friend Chad Boston says, and this is something you may or may not be able to answer, I would like to know a little bit more about the new reverbs. Is that something you can give a little hint on, or is it something you better wait on for a bit?
No. Can't talk about the new reverbs.
Okay.
Maybe shortly after NAMM.
Okay.
Maybe.
Fair enough. So one of the things we talked about too is the fact that people can still use their favorite pedals. Like I have some pedals here that I'm very anxious to try to put through the loops, like some of the the Strymon reverbs and things like that. Boss's new products that they brought out, like their modulation machines and the reverbs and the delays and things like that. So you're not necessarily bound to just using the Helix on its own.
No, absolutely. Right. That's why we put 4 effects loops on the big guy too. So. And just like we have our favorite amps, we have our favorite pedals, and we don't want, and again, it's not an all or nothing proposition. We want people to use their favorite pedals. We don't want people to think, oh, well, I have to give up my ZVEX Fuzz Factory because this has a ZVEX Fuzz Factory. And no, if you happen to have a custom modded ZVEX Fuzz Factory, or if you happen to have a POG or a Big Sky, or my favorite new reverb, the Maris Mercury 7, which is hi Angelo, if you're watching. Awesome guys there. I mean, or the New Neighbor reverbs.
Yeah.
Please pop them in. That's why we have the loops in there. The added advantage is that you can then assign that effects loop to a foot switch, color it whatever you want, name it Maris Mercury 7. It's probably too many.
Yeah, probably.
Mercury 7. Name it Mercury 7. Color it blue to match the pedal. And then if that particular pedal happens to respond in MIDI, you can go into the command center and then recall specific presets or specific parameters in that pedal and almost treat it as if it was built into Helix. It has to always be hooked up, of course, but you're now sort of editing it and recalling parameters and changing mix depths, and you can swap reverb engines in Big Sky, for example, just with a foot switch or preset recall.
Okay, good to know. Here's a question for people that like the Eddie Van Halen balance era tone, and I was able to used to get this tone back in the day when I was using some Rocktron products. And what I want to know is, does the Helix have detuning that you can use? Because what I would do is I would use stereo, and I'd go on the left side, I'd go like minus 11 cents, on the right side maybe positive 11 cents, get that bit of a stereo spectrum, and that gives the balance tone. Is that something we can do with the Helix as well, somewhere in that ballpark?
Oh yeah, that's similar.
Definitely.
That's the lowest DSP pitch block we have too. So I think it's.
Are you referring to like a best of both worlds type of tone, huh?
Yeah, and even more so. See, that's kind of a stereo spectrum as well too. But think of like your pound cakes.
Okay.
Think of even later than that. Like Big Fat Money. Judgment Day. Very the kind of the wet, dry, wet, but real broad spectrum as opposed to right narrow in your face.
Oh yeah, you can dial it in within 1/5 of a cent.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
So one 500th of a semitone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can totally
get some cool like chorus effects
Yeah.
that way, definitely.
So
yeah.
left side negative, right side positive, or vice versa.
Yep.
Good to know. I'm going to really experiment on that for sure. Here's a really good comment, and we're almost out of time here. This is a good way to get close to ending the evening. Bobby Clipper says, you don't need to know everything with the Helix, but it has it all when you need it. That's what I love. That's what he says.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, totally. Oh, indeed. Yeah, I agree.
And Taz Max 2002 says, does the tube delay in the Helix also model the preamp of the original unit?
I'm almost positive it does.
Let's see.
I know some of the older M-Class effects, there were two versions. There was one that includes all of the weird circuitry that changes the tone of that particular delay or mod pedal, and then there's the drive-through, I believe, which bypasses all of that signal, and I'm almost positive it should include it. I have to check with Ben tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, let's see. I'm just checking for one thing here. Yeah, diffusion, because I remember one of them having the. Okay, yeah, I'm just having some fun right here.
No problem. No,
The
totally.
answer is I don't know.
No problem.
I can't say.
There's a question here from James Burrow says, has anyone used the Line 6 editor on something like an MS Microsoft Surface? Do you know yourself, if anyone? Have you heard from any of your colleagues or customers? Or
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason we did the sliders as opposed to fancy graphics with knobs.
Mm-hmm.
Was that when you resize the window, you can then use the full length of whatever your tablet or your touchscreen to actually cop that sort of stuff as well. So,
Yeah, it flows very easily too. Very easy workflow.
Yep.
Nice. Well, we're about to wrap up here. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for not only coming on the show. I've learned a lot from you guys just in an hour and a half. Hopefully our crowd has here as well too. And being that you're new to the show, what I always tell people, we like to try to be the warm-up band for the weekend. So we hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. But I'm really excited with the product. I know the boy, he's more of a bass player than, I shouldn't say that. He plays bass, guitar, and keyboards. He's anxious to plug his bass in here. And there's quite a few bass patches, correct too, right?
Yep.
Pierce power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Running the Clawthorn bass distortion on this song that I was having the biggest trouble with mixing this past week, and it was like, oh, there's my bass tone, done.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Carlo Santin says, great show tonight. I love this stuff. Thanks, Eric and the Line 6 crew. You guys rock. Moscani says, my birthday is Christmas Day. Can I have a birthday present? Brad Bolin. Yeah. Brad would really benefit from this. He's an EVH, a great EVH player, and I think it would be a great product for him. Brad, let's talk, buddy. Let me see. Great show. That's from Frank's JC. And okay, here we go. Trey Mendoza says, will we ever get some pretty sick synth sounds in the Helix?
Yes.
Good. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Nice.
Our
love
last
the answer.
There you go. Yes is always a good answer. DJ Asterisk says, thanks Line 6 and thanks EVH Gear TV. No problem. It's my pleasure. And guys, thank you very, very much. Again, I want you to relay back to your team back in the headquarters here. Thank you very much for everything. There was a lot of people involved to making this happen. And it went great. Everyone from Henry to James to, your whole crew's people in the office and things like that too. So thank you very much for that. I do have links down below to all the entities, your website, Facebook group, Also to the forums I was talking about, the friendly gearfreaks.com, and Chad's his Facebook pages and stuff like that. Check that out. YouTube for sure. Find out what's going on YouTube. Subscribe to these channels. Subscribe to mine too if you would be so pleased, because then you'll be notified when I do more shows like this or demos. And I guarantee you're going to see a lot of demos in the coming days and weeks. Every time I do a live demo now, this is going to be the unit, and it's going to be a godsend for me, because now I don't have to have blasting amps back there. This room gets hot enough as it is without the tube amps being turned on 24/7 too. So greatly looking forward to it. So thank you, gentlemen. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And Eric, I know you have another appointment by the sounds of it after this one here. So thank you for your valuable insight and contributions tonight. I've had a great time.
No, this was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
this was
Appreciate
great.
it.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So we'll get that tone to everyone. You'll have it up on custom tone, and I'll put it in the description as well too. So there's a couple different places. I'm going to say goodbye to you, gentlemen, off the air here in a moment. We'll just going to turn it over to the outro credits. The little boy's going to tell people what his name is and what he's playing, and I'll say goodbye to you guys off the air. Okay, everyone, have a fantastic weekend. Thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.